Our city, our channel.
This is a regular meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Yes, let the record reflect Commissioners Orden, Mack, Bernardino, Druyan, and Saltzman are present, and we have a quorum, Madam President.
Thank you. And as always, we will begin the morning with any comments from the commissioners.
I do have one this morning. Thank you. After our, several weeks ago, we reviewed an audit that focused on front desk procedures and in particular foreign language procedures at our stations. And after that hearing, Chief Basinger and Commander Blake reached out to me and asked me to come with them to look at some of the changes that they're making and some of the changes they're considering making. And so last week I had the opportunity to go with Commander Blake to Southwest and also to Olympic to look physically at the locations of the front desk and the space that's available nearby for possible call centers, to look at the draft operations notices that they're working on for both the front desk and foreign language telephone calls, and also to speak to some of the officers and command staff working in those areas. And it's a work in progress, but I was very impressed with what I saw with the work that they're doing, the amount of thought they've put into thinking about how to make this work better. And so I just wanted to report back to that. I know they'll be coming back to us as well, but spent a fair amount of time with Commander Blake. I appreciate that, and wanted to commend the department for the work that they're doing. So thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Yes. Madam President, I had the privilege of attending the annual dinner meeting of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives this past Saturday at USC, and it was an excellent event. And this organization, for members of the public who may not be aware, involves law enforcement, African-American law enforcement executives from the rank of lieutenant and above across the board, including LAPD, but the sheriff and LAWA and all of the various law enforcement entities. And our new DA, Jackie Lacey, was the keynote speaker and gave an excellent address, and they had several really, really outstanding honorees. Dr. Robert Ross, who president of the California Endowment, and Deputy DA Bobby Grace, who was one of the candidates, and he and DA Lacey were warm and fuzzy toward each other. They've gotten past the election. And J.T. Thomas, who now is the police chief at USC, and of course for I think 22 years was an LAPD officer. So it was a wonderful event. And let me also express in advance my regrets. I'm going to have to leave the meeting shortly for another important engagement, so it's not because I'm mad at anybody.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to thank USC, as always. It was at the Town and Gown facility of USC, which made it a particularly lovely event.
Madam President?
Yes.
If I may add, last Thursday I was privileged to attend, along with Commissioner Druyan, the Chief, and Inspector General Bustamante, the LAPD's Muslim Forum at the Islamic Center here in Los Angeles. And it was Commander Williams, of course, gave a presentation on Sandy Hook, but discussed more of the sort of mass shootings. And of course, it was a great interest to the people there. And I know that we're going to have issue in the regular agenda concerning some issues that might relate to this group and the SARS audit and such. But I just wanted to point out a couple of things. It was the first time I've ever been to something like this. One of the things that the chief said in his remarks that evening was that he saw his partners. In fact, his words were, "I see my partners in the audience, in the community, partners to help make this a great city." And over the course of that meeting, I realized that's a very true statement, in that everyone there were committed and to working together, and it was a very cordial isn't the word. I'll just throw out another line from the evening. Someone in the audience, of course, Chief Downing was there, and someone in the audience shouted out spontaneously, "Chief Downing, we love you." And I don't think the chief's going to get that kind of response very often. But I say it as anecdotally, but there was a real spirit of cooperation there, and a real spirit of interest there. And of course, one of the issues they were concerned about was the suspicious activity reports and the audits for that. And there was very free give and take on that issue. And I have to say that that group would be ones that would be most concerned about that issue. And they seem to be very interested in it, and interested in knowing more about it, and interested in working with the department on those issues. And so for me, first time, it was a very enlightening evening and a very enjoyable evening, and it was a pleasure to be among citizens of Los Angeles that I would not normally have had a chance to be with in their center. So it was a really productive evening and a good face for the department.
All right. If there are no other comments, we'll move now to the report of the Chief of Police.
Thank you, Commissioners, and good morning. Thanks to the Commissioners who attended our various events and forums this past week. Having the Commission in attendance is very, very important. I think it shows the role of civilian oversight in the Los Angeles Police Department and adds a large degree of credibility to what we do. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedules to attend the various events. My report on crime as follows. Total park crime in the city is down as compared to last year, 9.1%. Contained within that, homicides are down 15.9%, rapes are down 38.6%, robberies down 13.6%, aggravated assault down 12%, violent crime totals down 14.1%. All facets of property crime that we measure are down, a total of 8.1%. Shots fired in the city are down 6.3%. Number of victims shot down a little over 13%. All our bureaus are showing a crime reduction, with the West Bureau having the greatest crime reduction. Assaults on police officers are also down, and officer-involved shootings are the same as they were last year at this time, with 10. Gang-related crime is down across the board. All 11 categories that we measure are down. Total gang crime reduction so far this year as compared to last is 21.8%, and even more amazingly, as compared to 2011, down 34.3%. That's led by our reduction in gang-related homicides this year so far, 36% reduction in gang-related homicides. So a really good start to the year. Obviously, we're only halfway through the third month, but it's a great start for the city of Los Angeles. My report on personnel, we have 10,007 sworn personnel on payroll. We have 272 Level 1 Reserve Police officers, 21 Level 2s, 128 Level 3s, a little over 1,000 volunteers. Civilian personnel, we have 2,856, and we have 491 vacancies in our civilian workforce. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief. The report of the Executive Director.
Morning, Madam President, members of the Commission. Just one brief item. I had the pleasure also of attending the Noble event on Saturday night, and congratulations to the individuals that were selected for honors, and also like to extend my appreciation to Lieutenant Chris Waters for all of her work as a member of Noble and one of the Board of Officers members putting the event together. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The report of the Inspector General.
Thank you, Madam President and Commissioners. I have nothing to report.
Today is number 5, the information on filed items only. We have 9 noise variance permits on file. as submitted for the period ending March 15th, 2013. More details are in the full agenda. And then we also have special event permits on file as submitted for the period of March 15th, 2013. Also, more details in the full agenda. I note that one of them is Thursday, March 14th, 2013, which was Save Our Court rally. As many of you know, the court system statewide and very particularly in Los Angeles is under extraordinary stress because of budget issues. And one of the things I think would be helpful, Mr. Executive Director, is to have a presentation of some of the impacts that the various court closings and changes will have upon our officers and on the public that we serve. So we will do that at a time that's convenient for the court personnel and for us. Any presentations today?
No, Madam President.
The consent agenda items, we have A through B. Is there a motion?
Move approval of items 7A and B.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved. And now moving directly to the regular agenda. 8A is our first item. It's the update and verbal presentation from the Community Police Advisory Board, known as CPAB, for the Hollywood area. And welcome, Mr. Minzer and Captain Girmala.
Good morning, Madam President. I'm Beatrice Girmala, the Commanding Officer of Hollywood area, and I'm here with my Community Police Advisory Board co-chair, Mr. Gary Minzer. Thank you to the Commissioners, Chief Beck, the Inspector General, Mr. Bustamante, and Mr. Tiefang for the privilege of being here today. A quick overview of Hollywood area statistics for 2013 versus 2012 year-to-date. Part 1 crime is at 29.1% crime reduction. Property crime is at minus 29.7%. Violent crime sits at minus 26.6%. And gang crime is at minus 33%. At this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Gary.
Thank you, Captain Girmala. And good morning, Commissioners and Chief Beck.
Gary. Good morning.
One of the successful components and truly the lifeblood of our CPAB has been our subcommittees. Our subcommittees are developed based on the needs of the community, and they change as the community's needs change. Throughout the years, amongst others, we've had subcommittees focusing on homeless, traffic, youth, nightclubs, prostitution, and emergency preparedness, which I'm going to speak to you about today. This year, our CPAB Emergency Preparedness Committee received a grant from Los Angeles County Health Department led by Agnes Tapasio. Agnes has been instrumental to our CPAB and the progressive nature of our Emergency Preparedness Committee. The grant has given us the opportunity to focus on the following: individual and family preparedness, special consideration of preparedness planning, our CERT program. It enhances our neighborhood network, including communication tools. It will help enhance our partnerships with local nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and small businesses in times of disasters. It will also assist us in donating and volunteering when disasters occur. And it will also help fund our September Emergency Preparedness Fair. We were truly very proud of our committee to be the successful recipient of this grant, as there were more than 40 applicants who applied for the county grant.
I'd like to turn now, I'm sorry, something happened to the slideshow. We're going to try to resume it right now to give you some visual representation as well. Here we go. In February of 2013, the doors of the Hollywood area soft room were opened for the most vulnerable victims of crime and abuse, children and those who have been physically or sexually assaulted. It is now housed in the Hollywood Detective Squad room. Built by donations from our CPAB members and generous members of the public, the room offers solace and a private space within our station. Depicted is a beautiful family who lost their baby and graciously decorated and furnished the room. We dedicated the soft room to the child's memory in a ceremony last week. The Department of Children and Family Services Multi-Agency Response Team, also known as MART, is now housed within Hollywood Detectives, thanks to our Detective Commanding Officer, Lieutenant Mark Reyna, who's here today. Mark, could you please stand? Thank you. The partnership has been outstanding as we better our response to the needs of our most vulnerable population. Through the generosity of community members, Hollywood area now has its own Connex box, a large cargo-sized container located in the station's parking lot. It safely stores excess belongings of members of the homeless community. It has become a compassionate means for holding property for up to 95 days, respecting it and avoiding its placement on the street or as a means to create encampments. Lieutenant Reyna's community contacts were the key to instituting this structure, and it's been hugely successful, and the homeless community uses it on a regular basis. Gary?
Thank you. Chapter 2 is our nighttime security campaign within the Hollywood Entertainment District. And for those of you who may not know, that district comprises Yucca to the north, Sunset to the south, Gower to the east, and La Brea to the west. Hollywood's resurgence amongst everything else is due to one major component, public safety. As I've mentioned to your board in past presentations, without a major public safety effort, Hollywood does not get turned around. Your department has made the commitment and effort to provide the public safety needed to give confidence to investors to come back to Hollywood. Hollywood continues to be the economic engine of the city. We now start Chapter 2, as Captain Grimala has so aptly named it. Chapter 2 is a private-public partnership to maximize public safety resources. Chapter 2 is modeled after the Sunset Boulevard Security Program, which our CPAB developed with businesses and property owners back in 2004 through 2006. This area was around Sunset and Crescent Heights. It did not have a formal business improvement district, and it was in need of a private security component to augment the resources from LAPD. They were experiencing gangs, prostitution, and drug peddling. The primary responsibility of Chapter 2 will be the posture of observing and reporting by this private security team. The need for our next step in public safety is due to the continued development taking place in Hollywood. Currently, the Hollywood area has over 385 ABC licenses, and over 120 of those licenses are in that small area which I described to you earlier. We are expecting a minimum of 25 additional licenses in the very near future. Examples of projects under construction or about to break ground are the following. The Millennium Project, over 1 million square feet, just under 4.5 acres. This development will be their own little village. It is what we call the Capitol Records Project on Vine, north of Hollywood. The Claret Group, the historic Taft Building, from the basement to the rooftop will be completely redone. Office, retail, restaurants, and 7 new ABC licenses. The Claret Group once again, and this is the Pantages Theater Project, 530 apartments, 70,000 square feet of retail, a big box store, and once again, additional ABC licenses on Hollywood Boulevard just east of Vine. And Emerson College, at the one-time historic Spaghetti Factory location on Sunset Boulevard near Gordon. This is a college of the arts focusing on internships for the studios and film industry. In addition to all of this, add the multiple First Amendment activities and theatrical events in Hollywood. With examples like I just mentioned, the need for Hollywood to move forward with Chapter 2 is paramount. For as you can see, Hollywood continues to grow, and more people are attracted to the area. The need for a strong continuance of public safety vigilance is of the utmost importance. And I truly, and finally, again, on behalf of the private sector, want to thank this board and LAPD for really playing such a major role in Hollywood's resurgence and for your continued efforts to support the community's public safety needs as Hollywood continues to develop.
Thank you, Gary. Tomorrow's future. Hollywood's Youth Mentoring Center opened its doors in August of 2010, solely run by 2 officers, volunteers, and CPAB member donations. 144 children are now enrolled, and approximately 40 to 50 students a day come through its doors. They benefit from tutoring, technology access, and help for officers on school projects. The relationship between the department, LAUSD, and the community continues to grow strong, based on building a bridge of trust and investment in the children of the area. A youth program update. Youth programs continue to thrive in Hollywood, with the latest addition being the Junior Cadets. Formerly known as the DAP program, these 9 to 12-year-olds 45 in number currently, enjoy a myriad of organized activities which builds their teamwork, confidence, and self-esteem. The other programs are listed there as well: cadets at 63, junior cadets, which is DAPS 45, PAL soccer 140, karate 120, dance 29, the total in the PAL program at 315. Thank you for graciously providing us the time today to share some of these updates with you and our Chapter 2 program as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation and the tremendous amount of work that you both put in, and everybody working with you does put in. It's very impressive and interesting. I had one question, which is just to ask you to talk a little bit more about the homeless, the structure in the parking lot for the property for the homeless. I'd just like to understand a little better how that works. It seemed like a great idea to me, and I'm just curious about it.
Yes, oftentimes if a homeless person is in transition, possibly looking for permanent housing, living on the street, and we try to facilitate his or her placement with social services, for example, there's usually some obstinance there because of all of the belongings. And rather than be less than compassionate and try to move those belongings or feel that they are given less importance by law enforcement, we make the offer to facilitate that transition to store those items. Oftentimes, they may include documents, but they may also be of personal significance to the individual. So we tag them, we give the person a receipt, we hold them in the Connex box for up to 95 days, and then very usually they'll come back to the station, and Lieutenant Mark Reyna actually personally helps facilitate the return of the items. And I think it builds goodwill. It also helps the community with quality of life issues to decrease the number of encampments in Hollywood by offering a substitute. We can criticize all we want, but if we don't offer some type of substitute, we're leaving little option, and this often creates great anxiety for the homeless population, and we're trying to alleviate and better that relationship.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it. It seems like it's a great idea to me.
Thank you.
So as I understand it then, the materials are stored in the Connex box.
Yes.
Someone will show up with their receipt and ask for it back, and then an officer will go and retrieve it for them.
Yes, it's under lock and key. It's maintained in our parking lot, so it's very secure. Usually it'll be a backpack with maybe even toiletries, other items, but we keep that as a gesture, again, of goodwill and trying to maintain respect, because if that respect base is not there, we can ill afford to expect cooperation be past that point.
I think it's a very good idea. How many people are participating in this Connex project?
It's almost at full capacity now, so we could have upwards of 50 or 60 people who participate in the program, and they do come, and they're very grateful and happy that we were able to maintain those items. So it's been very successful, and again, Lieutenant Mark Reyna used his contacts with the community to help us get that box, because it is somewhat of an expensive undertaking, and it was painted, there's shelves in there, so it's not just that items are thrown in there. They're itemized, and it's very respectful as far as keeping those items.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another great example of how the partnership and the contributions and the monetary contributions have been an enormous help throughout the city. I'm a graduate of LeConte Junior High, the Assistance League Boys and Girls School, and Hollywood High, and it is a great pleasure to see Chapter 2. I was probably a little before Chapter 1, but it is a great pleasure to see these changes, and it's very exciting, and particularly the programs with the young.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam
Yes.
President, we have a comment card. Monica Harmon.
Good morning. I wanted to be here in support of Hollywood Division and Captain Gramala. I've known her for years, and her staff. Mark Reyna, we miss you at Pacific, but we're glad you're at Hollywood doing great things. It's really unfortunate, all the great things that Hollywood is doing, rarely would you see them in the media. But I guarantee you, if something negative was happening, there they would all be as well, and airing it. They have great youth programs, and what a lot of people don't understand is the youth in Hollywood come from a lot of very, very low-income families that don't have money to take their kids on trips or mentor them or give them tutoring like the officers at Hollywood do. The other thing that I loved is I was impressed with how large their CPAB is, their community outreach. I was honored to be asked to give the anti-bullying program. I've had a couple of presentations at the schools in the area. Bullying is an epidemic in all the schools. I believe it's the #1 public safety issue. And a lot of their committees, it's like everybody is engaged in Hollywood. Everybody is doing something. The committees are people that live and are concerned about what's going on. So it's really nice to see. This is one of my favorite divisions because they truly are an example of community policing and getting out there and engaging the people, whether they're the people that don't necessarily agree with everything LAPD does, but come together and at least have that dialogue. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you the next time.
Thank you, Madam President.
All right, I think we now move to the Inspector General's report regarding the suspicious activity report audit, and that's 8B.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to wait a moment until my Assistant Inspector General, Carrie McCaskill, who's in charge of audits, actually takes a seat at the table. Commissioners, as you're well aware, several months ago, the Commission and the Department asked the Office of Inspector General to perform an audit on the SARS program, and that's what we have done. In order to perform this audit in a manner to give immediate feedback to the Commission as well as the public on our first report, we decided to take a 4-month window. That 4-month window was picked immediately after Special Order Number 1 went into effect. And then this audit was unique. As the Commission is generally aware, we do a sampling of a number of cases. In this one, we did a 100% sample. We looked at absolutely every SAR in a 4-month period. And unlike other audits where we just concentrated on the procedural aspects and the performance aspects of the audit, this one we looked at everything top to bottom for any issue that might arise, whether it be constitutional in nature or whether there might be some other substantive issue in place, as well as some of the more common audit features that we generally look at. What was also unique about this audit, that prior to starting this audit, we immediately met with several community groups and individual members trying to figure out how we were going to structure this audit and what areas we were going to look at in particular. This was, of course, an item of first impression for us, since we had not looked at the system before, as it was for many of the community members. So before we undertook the audit, we asked for feedback from the community and got a lot of feedback that we tried to roll into the audit. What we then did is, after we completed the audit, we had a draft and we continued to meet with community members. We met with some of the more vocal opponents to this, as well as the Muslim community and the Sikh community. And I think that my office met with approximately 6 to 7 meetings, including one of the chief's forums. I'd say a total of about 300 or 400 people with various stakeholders in the community to talk about the issues, and then also tell them what the process was, why we focused in on 4 months, that it was a desire to get to the community and to get to the Commission some immediate feedback. And it was also a launching point for a more exhaustive audit the following year, where we would be looking at all of 2013. We also met with the community members in an effort to ask them how we can improve our audit and what we can do going forward. We got an excellent amount of feedback from the community members that we have folded into our audit plan for the 2013 model. I can say that 95 to pretty close to 100% of the recommendations that they made, we will aspire to include into the audit and offer a greater level of transparency to the community. As I mentioned, the next audit for this particular area will be for the entire 2013 year. but I wanted to focus in on some of the particular findings and the objectives for this particular audit. Aside from looking at any constitutional issues and any substantive issues that might arise in this particular grouping, we also looked at two of the more traditional audit features, and the objectives were to determine if each suspicious activity report was properly completed. That was number one. And number two, to determine if each suspicious activity report was adequately processed by the Major Crimes Division Analysis Unit. We did find that the department was 100% compliant with both of these objectives. We did note that there were two recommendations that we made and that the department has agreed to do. The department was promising to ensure that all SARs thoroughly describe the facts and circumstances surrounding any contact with an individual, thereby allowing department personnel as well as the Office of Inspector General and the Commission to determine if the circumstances related to any contact are constitutional. The second one is the department will now maintain all SARs in a secure location and restrict access to these reports. Additionally, the department will develop a tracking system to record each time a SAR is accessed so that the department can audit as well as my office can audit why people are looking at particular SARs, for what purpose, and what the frequency might be, so that we can further include that information in any future SAR report. I wanted to actually thank, too, at this point, the Human Relations Commission. They were instrumental in actually helping the Office of Inspector General to get out to all the stakeholders in the community to talk extensively and have very candid conversations about some of the concerns the community members might have about this policy, and they were very tireless in putting things together and making sure that kind of all cross sections of the community were adequately represented. And pending any questions you might have, Madam President, that's my report.
Well, the written report is quite thorough, but would you have a question?
I do. I have a few questions just about things I'm not sure I understand completely. That I'd like to make sure I do. On page 3 of the report, page 3 of 9, the last sentence in the second paragraph, the department's currently recommending that the SARS reports, regardless of whether the SAR met department criteria, be retained for 10 years. It would help me to understand a little better what your recommendation is, or what the department's recommendation about that is, and I just want to understand that a little bit better.
My understanding is because of the requirements the department has for document retention purposes, that they're required to maintain certain documents for a certain period of time, that that particular sentence is referring to the department trying to figure out what their requirements as far as documents that they have to maintain, whatever the purpose may be, for litigation purposes or any other related purposes. But I don't want to speak out of school, and I think maybe someone from the department might be able to explain that process a little bit better, including possibly Chief Downing or Chief Beck.
Welcome, Chief Downing.
Morning. Morning. Yeah, if you recall the last session we had here, we talked about what to do with some of these SARs that don't meet this criteria, they get unfounded, and in the beginning we were willing to purge them, to shred them all, but that came with some challenges in terms of our record retention laws, and so this is compliant with our record retention protocols, procedures, and actually laws to keep them for 7 to 10 years.
So this is a record that would be of an unfounded SARS. Would it have a name of the person who was investigated?
All the PII, the personal identifier information, would be removed, but the existence, the DR number, or the record retention number, and some specifics about it would still be in place.
But you wouldn't be able to identify the person?
No.
Right. Thank you. Second question, it may well be better directed to Chief Downing. On page 4 of 9 of the report, there are 2 graphs. One shows the nature of the suspicious activity, and one of the categories is other, and I just was curious what sorts of things that might be, given that all the numbers are relatively small, 10 of something undefined. I just was curious about what those might be.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure.
We had, of course, the identified categories that you see referenced above, the express or implied threat, photography, and those were some of the programs that were, the categories that were already identified and specified. I think others is kind of an accumulation of different cases that don't meet the particular.
The other things that are listed
Correct.
in that longer list?
Right. Correct.
Yeah, there are 16 primary.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Listed here.
Right.
So those are the ones that are most frequent, and that's why they merited a photography or a express or implied threat. And the others category are literally a smattering of all the other potential 16 categories.
And then my last question is page 7 of 9, under recommendations, the second paragraph regarding the maintaining the SARS in a secure location. And I just was curious about the status of that.
Commissioner, I just wanted to, when we did this audit, the one thing that was, I think, helpful for the Office of Inspector General is that we had a lot of community feedback, and then we had a lot of openness by the department. And my staff actually spent a lot of time over with Chief Downing's staff and going over every shred of paper and looking and asking questions about every particular item. And when we had the dialogue not only with the community but as well as with the department, we started to sharpen up some of the issues and then also identify areas that we can improve. One of the areas which Chief Downing and his staff and I had discussed is how to deal with this document retention issue and how to make sure that you don't have these documents in various different locations and at least make it difficult for individuals to be accessing this for improper purposes, and give me an audit trail. Give me something that I can look at and I can determine why people are looking at particular areas and see if someone's accessing this for improper reasons, and then bring it, of course, to the public's attention and bring it to the Commission's attention. But this was something that Chief Downing and I had long discussions on, and he was more than happy to work with us and thought that this was a valid point and agreed to this. And that was the way that this audit went. I think from the openness from the community as well as the openness from the department, that's kind of where we were able to kind of reach out to many of these issues and I think set up a better process for looking at things going forward.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
I might point out, just for those who have the full report, that the addendum, which is page 8 of 9, does list the 16 distinct activities or behaviors which are potentially appropriate, and they include everything from aviation activity to excess weapons and various other areas. Any other questions?
Just one thing I wanted to understand a little better. My concern is about people who have a SARS report and it's unfounded, meaning there's no basis to it.
Correct.
You said their identities are removed. I didn't quite understand that.
At the point that it's unfounded, it's immediately purged from the system, so it's not searchable or retrievable. But it does exist in the form of a hard copy where the PII information is removed, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Any personal information could be an individual's name, a moniker, their address, a license plate, anything that if an investigator wanted to attempt to locate and identify who that person was described on a report, that information would be purged and removed if that report is deemed unfounded, and it would be removed from any databases. Also to include, as we discussed earlier, the reports as far as access to those reports. Those reports, we've adopted the recommendations from the Inspector General's office. They're in a secure location within Major Crimes Division, which the facility of Major Crimes Division is also only accessible with a employee ID card and a 4-digit code that you must punch into the door as well.
Captain Downey, I'm less concerned with someone accessing a hard copy. That is least of my concerns. My concern is I assume all this is placed in a computer file and stuff like that, and what are our protections there to make sure no one can get into that, hack into that, and obtain this information?
Well, it's purged out of the computer file, so there will be no digital copy of this in any system. It's purged immediately upon the finding that it's unfounded. It's
deleted out.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
And I just add one other thing. In summarizing the audit reports, audit results on page 6, I believe you really did do this, but you had 2 major objectives, which were determine whether each SAR was properly completed and determine if each SAR was adequately processed by the analysis unit. And if you could just emphasize what you found there.
Sure. And to go into the specific details, I'll actually ask Gary McCaskill, who actually headed that audit, to talk about some of the specifics of what his team was looking at. But I know that we had, not only with these, just to emphasize that we did look at these objectives, but we also kind of did that top to bottom look that we talked about and went through absolutely every facts, the facts of every case, to go way beyond this. So it's a little misleading just to focus in on just the objectives. This was a much larger view, and the objectives are just the mechanical audit feature that we generally do with our audits. But I'll have Gary.
Good morning, Commissioners. As the graph indicates, and we have looked at every piece of paper that was there and evaluated them for those 2 aspects that are mentioned here. So as far as the completion portion, again, we simply look at each SAR to see if every aspect is properly done. And I think the more important piece for us was the analysis piece that Major Crimes Division was responsible for. That's the piece that is somewhat subjective. That's the piece that, if improperly done, might lead to a SAR that does go through the system and is not purged. So in that respect, again, we looked at the information they had. We talked with the investigators in Major Crimes, and then we made our own analysis of the information, the facts, case by case, and our determination was completely the same as the analysis by Major Crimes Division.
Thank you very much. With that, I believe we have public comment.
Yes. Yamin Salahi.
Yeah, I know. It's fine.
Okay.
Only one?
No, Yaman, Y-A-M-A-N. Oh, I'm sorry.
Good morning. My name is Yaman Salahi. I'm a staff attorney and the Arthur Lyman Fellow at the ACLU of Southern California. The main thing that I had to say about the audit report is that I think it would be a mistake to take it as a vindication of the SARS program, because the concerns that have been raised over the course of several years are that the SARS program can lead to potential civil liberties and civil rights violations and invade the privacy of people engaged in perfectly lawful activities. And the most important factor going to that is how does the department interpret these nebulous categories that are listed as suspicious behaviors, and how is it applied? And unfortunately, the audit sheds no light on that. So there are no, for example, illustrative examples of what some of the SARS, what kinds of incidents or encounters the SARS referred to. And we spoke with the IG about this, and the IG mentioned that his hands were tied because the department didn't want that kind of information potentially getting out for investigative or security concerns. But similar reports that have been done by the Senate Subcommittee on Investigations, for example, on the federal level, do include some summaries, of course, removing all the personally identified information and anything that could relate to ongoing investigations. And they tell us that when the federal government is making these kinds of reports, they sometimes include incidents that arouse no suspicion of any criminal activity. The second issue is the concerns that have been raised over several years about what the reasonably indicative standard is. And for the same reason that I mentioned before, we still have no idea about how the department interprets that and whether it's consistent with reasonable suspicion, which is supported by decades of case law. So our main recommendation to the Board of Police Commissioners, because it's my understanding that you can define the scope of future audits, and that would be to include more request the department be willing to release some information about some of the SARs that are actually being processed. Yeah,
thank you.
Next speaker, Bihal Ali, followed by James Lafferty.
Bilal Ali, Occupy the Hood, LA Action Assembly, a member of the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. We find questionable, and we're wondering that on the audit there is no data on the LAPD budget and expenses assigned to the STAR program, and this comes after, even though the State Senate Subcommittee found that there was a lack of adequate financial oversight with this program. And then we can talk about the $75,000 for the 55-inch screen TVs, the money spent out for camera buttons. So we're concerned why there is no anything in there stating what that budget is, especially at a time where the state is going through budget constraints, especially at a time where we're lacking funding for adequate housing, we're lacking funding for adequate our schools, we're lacking funding for adequate health care, and at the same time, millions of dollars are being applied to this program, and there is no budget oversight. We do know now where the money is going, so we're concerned about that. We'd like more oversight on that budget. And among the other problems with this program, I don't think spending money to so-called protect us against terrorism, while at the same time where people are finding themselves homeless because they can't find protection from homelessness. They can't get any protection from adequate schooling. This is the protection that this community needs, not spying on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim Lafferty, the director of the National Lawyers Guild. I join in the comments of the last two speakers, especially the speaker of the gentleman from the ACLU. Chief Beck, I'm not going to waste my time, frankly, talking about an audit which does nothing more than confirm the fact that the police department is doing what it said it would do. The underlying problem is what isn't audited, because it isn't within the power of the Inspector General to audit it, and that is whether or not violations of the civil rights and the constitutional rights of people in this society are being violated or not. You know, it would be foolish of us to pretend that history doesn't teach us what happens even with well-intentioned programs. And I know you, and I take you at your word when you want to create a police department that doesn't visit those dark days of the past. But these programs have never failed to lead to those kinds of dark days of the past. It always ends up spying on political groups, political activists, whatever the intentionality may be. There's already been an admission that this hasn't caught any criminals. It hasn't prevented any acts of terrorism, despite its expenditures of millions of dollars. We know where the program leads. I mean, my goodness, I and all sorts of people here who are political activists and who organize on a weekly, sometimes basis, political protests in the streets of this country, I'm ready to confess. I've engaged in all sorts of suspicious activities that I'm sure would find themselves into these files, but I don't know if I'm there. I have no way to find out if I'm there. And if I'm there, I have no way to protest the fact that my name or a suspicious activity report of myself is in there. And yet, I'm accused of no crimes, and I organize nothing but politically constitutional protected protests in this city. So what good is this program? It hasn't made us safe from terrorism. It hasn't solved any crimes. All it does is set itself up with millions of dollars of apparatus that the past tells us will invariably be used to do exactly what you say this police department did you acknowledge did in the past and shouldn't do again, and that is spy on the lawful activities of the citizens of this city. I urge you to rescind Special Order 1.
Thank you.
Quasi, the last name is spelled Nkrumah, followed by Morella Sabah.
Thank you. That's Kwasi Nkrumah. I'm the co-chair of the Martin Luther King Coalition of Los Angeles. And as several of the speakers previously said, you know, as I think Jesus Christ himself said, where 2 or 3 are gathered together, there's going to be some mess. Now, the Police Commission exists in order to provide some protection for citizens and oversight of agencies that have police power in our community. We have to be concerned with the money that's being spent, with the potential threats and actual threats to our civil and human rights, and we have to insist and let other people in the community focus on what's happening with programs such as this, because they do represent threats to our rights. Historically, that's been proven. A lot of people are having experiences right now that are proving that. So we're going to continue with that in the community and continue to turn people out to these hearings, not because we're saying that any individual here necessarily has evil intent, but institutionally, these things are threats to our rights as the citizens, and we're going to continue to come back and continue to alert people in the community to be very on top of what's going on with this. I want to thank the Coalition Against Police Spying, because it is raising these issues in our community that need to be examined, and people are not aware. They are not well enough equipped necessarily to defend their rights, and that's the situation we'll continue to work against. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I must begin by warning first that the language that I will use and the communities I represent will make me subject to a suspicious activity report by the standards you all continue to uphold. We've been here before, and we're back like we knew we would have to be. As long as this Los Angeles Police Department continues to participate in the violation of our lives, then we have no choice but to be here, to confront it, to demonstrate accountability to this department and the funding it protects and serves. And justice for ourselves and loved ones in our communities, we have to be here. We stand inside one of the top terrorism-causing departments standing today. And as a community, I'm not afraid to call out the abuse and fear that this department continues to perpetuate in our lives. This is how we let go of our fear here, standing before you, people to people. Every time we've been here, we find another change in masks. Same building, same chief, same inspector general, same commission, etc., etc. But always different masks. Masks, lies to justify Special Order 11, Special Order 1, the iWatch program, to justify abuse, to justify racism, to justify mass incarceration, to justify continued deportation of our peoples, and to justify a waste of resources. And today we receive yet another mask. The Inspector General's audit, limited edition, very limited, and as a community we're here to propose our own solutions. We have no choice but to do so, and we are grateful to present the people's audit because we had to do the work ourselves.
Thank you.
Becky Dennison, Emilio, followed by Janet Garcia.
Good morning. I'm Becky Dennison with the Los Angeles Community Action Network, also a member of the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I support all of the speakers before me and the issues they've raised. I want to reiterate a couple of things and raise a question. I just want to restate our opposition to this special order and urge this commission to consider rescinding it, not just to see sort of cursory audits done on it. if you're not ready to consider rescinding it, you should absolutely demand a more thorough audit. It's ridiculous to say that this audit looked at more than the objectives. The objectives of the audit were clear. That's what was measured, and that's what we found out. There is no analysis of the constitutional protections. There is no analysis of potential civil rights violations. There is no analysis of what's happening in terms of communities that are being targeted, whether racial profiling is increased under this special order, and all of the other civil rights and privacy violations that we are concerned about, that the communities are legitimately concerned about because of orders such like this and the history that they have played in our communities and as political activists, as Jim said. I also want to raise a question about this idea that the unjustified SARs are being completely purged. We were told in our meeting that they were not completely purged, that was one of the concerns that was raised by the audits, that unjustified SARs were remaining in certain databases. So I would like someone to answer whether what you're talking about is what we're doing going forward or what's been happening, because it's completely contradictory information to information we got in community meetings, that this information was not being properly purged, and therefore what has happened to it up until this point and what will happen to it going forward. This audit is insufficient. This special order is wrong. This commission owes the community more in directing the Inspector General to look at this issue much more broadly.
Thank you.
Emilio?
Good morning. My name is Emilio. I'm a youth organizer with the Youth Justice Coalition, as well as a member of the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. Special Order 1 is much more damaging and harmful policy, an attack against our communities and our young community organizers. Extending police surveillance and police state apparatus is not something that creates more public safety, but quite the opposite. A few months ago, one of our members and a close friend of mine was going for a light jog in his own community near the Boyle Heights downtown area. He saw some street art on a wall and thought it looked cool, so he pulled out his camera phone and took a picture to share with his friends and kept running. A few minutes later, two large white agents in unmarked uniforms pulled up next to him in a car, got out, ran over to him, grabbed him by his arms, took his phone momentarily, and started to harass him and ask him questions about who he is, where he works, what he's doing here, and why he's taking photos. Scared and shocked, the young man answered quickly and nervously, totally unaware of why this was happening. When they finally left, he felt violated, insecure, confused, and unsafe. After further investigation, we realized that the agents saw him on a surveillance camera and chose to target and harass him solely for taking a picture of some street art on the wall. Law enforcement officers will also interrogate our youth and, without their knowledge, place them on an inaccessible gang database, further criminalizing them. Now, we look at this audit and we look at the SARs and Special Order 1, and nowhere in this discussion did we hear anything about the process for examining and harassing and stopping our youth and the actions of law enforcement and our community members and what that effect is having. Not once did I hear about unfounded SARs that were taken in these kind of circumstances where innocent people, community members, are trying to live their daily lives and they're unable to because of policies like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet Garcia, followed by Nadia Khan. Janet Garcia. Nadia Khan.
My name is Nadia Khan. I'm with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I'm also a student. I'm studying to become a teacher. It's interesting because when I was reading the Inspector General's audit, right now in my logic class, we're learning about fallacies and how you can point out illogical reasoning. And it was riddled with illogical reasoning, fallacies of ambiguity. I mean, I could go on and on, but that's not really the point. So I think that's just one thing to point out. The other thing I'd like to point out is that the IG cherry-picked the data. You know, you said, yes, it was only supposed to be 4 months, but I think when you look at the 4 months, you see all the holes that are in there. And I really look forward to see what your next audit is. And I hope it's not just of 2013. I hope it's of all the other 4 years in between. The other thing is that this audit further confirms why the people of Los Angeles don't have any trust in the LAPD. I mean, we've seen this history of transparency, and I'm very curious, and I just wish I could hear the private conversation you have with your team when we're not all listening, because I'm sure you very carefully plan what you're going to say to the public. And even then, we see the contradictions with which the last sister Becky pointed out, and that's just one. When you lead to a decrease in trust, you lead to a decrease in public safety. I always see these bumper stickers, there's no excuse for domestic violence. Well, if the women who are getting beaten don't feel like they can trust you, then they're going to stay in those same situations. So, I mean, I think what you're promoting here is a lot of unsafety. And I'd also like to request, make a suggestion, that the chief's report include what are the beatings that happen? What are the harassments that happen? What are the shootings that happen on the hands of the people you're trying to keep in check, your officers? It's not all just bad things like somebody had said. We only hear from this commission all the positive, fluffy hugs that happen. But let's see what's really going on. I really hope you hear these words. This isn't a game. These are people's lives you're playing with. And of the 300 people our People's Audit surveyed, 5 have trust in the LAPD. There's something wrong with that picture. So I really hope you take a better look at our People's Audit. It's a lot more thorough than the Inspector General's. Thank you.
Hamid Khan.
Good morning. My name is Hamid Khan with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. It's just interesting to note that apparently the history of SARS program started in February 2012 as far as this audit is concerned. It's extremely disappointing, and we start off by where the coalition has low expectations of the Office of Inspector General, but to really just to come up with this audit that looks at only at a 4-month period of a policy that has gone through 3 permutations. Special Order 11 starting in March of 2008, Special Order 1 under Chief Beck, and then again a revision in August of 2001. So now to come back and say that, well, we just cherry-picked this data, and then amongst that as well to look at 25 SARs out of the 78 and make a judgment call is quite frankly just disgraceful of this office that has over $4 million in budget. I mean, then we have to also look at the various others. And I just want to point one thing, that this whole conversation about purging of the data has been going on. But when you look at the audit itself, it's not just kept in one database. There are 3 databases where these unfounded SARs are kept. It's the department's divisional record database, the records and identification division, and the major crimes division. So it's completely contradictory to what you hear. On one hand, it seems like the department is speaking from both sides of her mouth. So that which brings us to that, and I hope that you've received a copy of this People's Audit. This People's Audit is a result that we knew that this is going to have this Inspector General's audit is going to be extremely limited. We hope that you look at this People's Audit because it's not just based on the viewpoint of the City of Los Angeles and the residents of the City of Los Angeles, but it's substantiated by think tank analysis, by the Political Research Associates, by a report from the National Academy of Sciences and Engineering, by the U.S. Senate report, and various other analysis that has come out of the SARS report, which has completely debunked this myth of data mining and behavioral surveillance because it doesn't work. It's going to lead to false positives. It's going to water down the thresholds that we have right now from probable cause to reasonable suspicion, and now this completely unprecedented legal language which has no meaning at all of reasonable indication, and it's really a waste of resources. So we feel again and again that we come back to this commission and we look at you as custodians of public trust, but apparently, it seems to be falling on deaf ears, and we would like to come back and make a presentation of this People's Audit to you formally. Thank you.
Monica Harmon.
Good morning. I'd like to remind the group that's here and everyone else to give you a different perspective. A couple of years ago, a New York vendor was doing something that people thought was suspicious behavior enough to contact the police. Because of that one call, Times Square was not bombed by later finding out this person's suspicious behavior was going to put a bomb in his car, or had a bomb in his car. Secondly, because I do a lot of anti-bullying assemblies, right now the focus is on mass shootings, sometimes at school. Thankfully, Los Angeles has not had those. Thankfully, thank you, Chief Downey, with your unit, we haven't been attacked by terrorists because we have been a #1 target with LAX and federal buildings downtown. So it's like you have your civil rights and you have, wondering whether it's a line whether you should report suspicious activity, but I'm sorry, I would rather have someone report suspicious activity. Students across the United States have prevented mass school shootings due to suspicious behavior that they saw and reported it to police, and I have a whole list of that, and that's what now the focus is turning to. So, they are a group that do not support this. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of community members throughout Los Angeles that do support it. So you're going to get both sides of the issue. I just felt I needed to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other comment cards, Madam President.
No other comment cards?
Not on this item.
Obviously, this is a work in progress, and there will be additional auditing. It might be helpful, Captain Downing, if explain the purge issue. Chief Downing, I'm sorry. Chief Downing, the purge issue, or perhaps Inspector General.
Sure. I think I could probably short-circuit this a little bit, because I think what Chief Downing was talking about was what we saw was initially that there's the purge database, but there's also hard copies in different locations, and that what Chief Downing and the department and Captain Sandbar and my office had spoken about is how going forward can we really limit the documents and where they might be housed to remove this risk. So I think everyone was pretty much saying the same thing here, and that there was no confusion as it. We identified some of the concerns that we had. We talked with the department. They recognized some of these concerns, and they've agreed to make the changes that we've recommended in the report. So I don't think there's any disconnect here at all as far as how to handle this on a going forward basis.
That's where to keep the records, but the other issue that's raised is when you have an unfounded SAR, is the PPI, the personal information, purged throughout the department from whatever records are kept, whether they're kept in hard copy, however they're kept. My understanding from what you were saying is that that personal information is purged when there's an unfounded SAR.
It's purged out of all the electronic databases, correct.
What about the hard copy?
The hard copy still exists. The hard copy will exist. Now, if you remember last time, we wanted to get rid of it. We wanted to purge that, but we were advised that it would be a violation of our record retention laws to do that. So we found another avenue, and that is to keep it under a secured, locked area with control access, and people who did access it would have to sign a roster and date the roster, et cetera, as to the purpose that they access the information for.
And up till today, where are those hard copies kept, and are they going to be transferred into the secure facility?
First of all, the original copy of a SAR is kept in a locked file cabinet within Records and Identification, R&I division, and they have a specific protocol in place for that and for the security of those. The working copy of the SAR is only maintained within Major Crimes Division. After the particular SAR is reviewed and vetted, if that particular SAR does not rise to the ODNI standards, as we've discussed previously, then that SAR would be unfounded and it would be purged from the system. That particular copy of the report is kept within a locked, secured room within Major Crimes Division under the recommendations of the Inspector General's office to have a audit system and mechanism in place to ensure that if that particular copy or any of that information is ever reviewed or looked at, there would be the date, time, who's looking at it, and the specific purpose.
Where's the original kept? Where's the original purged?
The original report of the hard copy would be kept at R&I Division, and it would be subject to the retention that we discussed earlier for 7 to 10 day record retention policy.
Why do you need 2 copies of it?
The original hard copy would...
Once you, assuming you unfounded it, this is what we're talking about. You have an original and you have a working copy, and you found it to be unfounded, and the only reason you're keeping a hard copy of it is because of the record retention requirements.
Yes, sir.
And you purged it electronically. Why do you need 2 hard copies, an original and a copy? Why don't you just have one and keep it in one place?
Well, number one, the hard copy at records and identification is per the policy and the laws applicable for that. And our hard copy, we can discuss the purging and the destroying of that particular report with the Inspector General's office. However, as we've learned from past audits, when we start destroying documents that are working copies that explain the process in which we reviewed something, which also has why we did what we did and the methodology in that, then by purging that, there's no documentation or anything to show and to prove to the Inspector General or any audit what we specifically, in fact, did. And so that would be one reason why we would need to retain the information, which would be the copy and our working folder. However, all of the personal identifying information is removed from any database.
I think that that's where the confusion is, because in response to Commissioner Bernardino's question before, it was said that all identifying information would have been removed on the unfounded, even as to the hard copy that was kept. But that may not be so.
Yeah, that was a... Then I misspoke on that. Out of the digital electronic systems, they're all purged. But on the hard copy, it remains the same. And I think the 2 locations really... it was a recommendation of the Inspector General to have a secure environment where we keep this working copy so that audits can take place and that they can come in and do the audits.
I guess my question is, if you, and I understand the reason that you have to retain some hard copies if it's legally required to do that, but I guess my question is, why do you need 2 copies? And if you do need 2 copies, and I think Captain Sandberg's explained why you might need 2 copies, why don't you keep those together in the same place?
And we you know, this is short. We can look at that, and I don't have any problem keeping them in the same place. But I want everybody to remember why we're keeping that one copy with the information. You know, this body, my office, we need to be able to track what Major Crimes does. You know, we need to be able to. I need to make sure that we don't have 3 or 4 unfounded SARs on the same individual. And if we were to purge the names and the PII from every copy, there'd be no way that we could check on the people that we need to maintain tight control on. You know, the department fully understands that this is ground that needs careful watching. Not only because of our history, but because of the history of in the entirety of the profession in the United States. And to purge everything would make it impossible to track what's been done in the past and create a giant hole in what we need to be a very, very secure program. So, you know, we'll look, and I don't see any reason on the face of it. Maria probably might best speak to this, but I don't see any reason why we can't keep everything in the same secure location. You know, and then we can work with the Inspector General if it takes creating another room like we do for financial disclosure. We can do that too. You know, this is, you know, we want people to have faith in us in managing these unfounded the small amount of unfounded SARs that there are. And so we'll come up with the right system. We can work, and we'll work with the advocates and the opponents of the system to find something that everybody has some faith in.
That's my point. I'd just like to make sure that we minimize the
right. I think
amount of data that's out there.
I think we're getting it's very close to having a groupthink here where we should get rid of all this information, and that's a very bad idea. That's exactly what led to the problems in the past. Is the department deleting information from past
I'm not
investigations.
suggesting. I just want to see it done in a way that minimizes.
And we can do that. That's just a mechanical issue, and we'll work on that, and we can come back to the body about that.
And fully understandable to all of us and to the public. I think this is something perhaps Commissioner Druyan will be working on specifically too with the Inspector Generals as we go forward. Is there a motion?
Move approval of item 8.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is approved. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
C is the department's report relative to the supplemental police account, fourth quarterly report. It is mainly informational. I think...
I move approval of item 8C.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved. All right, we will recess now. Comment. I'm sorry.
Monica Harmon, Annie Hall, followed by Hamid Khan.
I promise this is the last time. First of all, I want to thank LAPD for the SHARE program. Detective Pinedo, it's a Stop Hate and Respect Everyone program where they go out to the schools and educate the students. I have had students at some of the anti-bullying assemblies that during Black History Month destroyed a costume of one of the teachers. And I had Detective Pinedo contact them. Also, Devonshire and Topanga are really thinking outside the box. 2 weeks ago, they had a breakfast, teachers for principals and teachers to talk about what LAPD would do if there was a mass shooting at their school, because a lot of these educators are a little bit nervous having it in the media, and over 200 attended. I spoke on the anti-bullying social isolation of the suspects. Topanga had one the following Saturday. Over 100 educators on their own time who were not paid showed up. They did something similar, so it's a great move that LAPD is doing to help the schools during this time, and I just wanted you to be aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Annie Hall.
Good morning, Madam President, Chief Beck, Commissioners. I'm urging and pleading that you appoint me an investigator today. Investigation maintains the public confidence. All complaints must be thoroughly and partially investigated. Internal Affairs, currently under the command of Professional Standard Bureau, operate as the investigative arm of the Chief of Police to identify and report corruption and police behavior that tends to discredit the department, policies, procedures, or practice. You cannot be prejudiced concerning who gets to be treated fairly and just. Any official that deprives a citizen of this right is acting outside of the law. This is California 2013, not Mississippi 1860. My family and I have suffered long enough, and we cannot go on any longer. This is, this is egregious. It's appalling. And Chief Beck, I just want you to know, if I can just get this investigation out of the way, because it is heart-wrenching. We're still homeless, and we lost everything. My stuff that we'll never get back again, my home, everything that we have in there, pictures of my parents that passed away, my mother that passed away, all our personal belongings, our Bibles, everything that we own and that we work hard for. And we need to resolve this issue. And so I hate to keep coming back and begging and pleading you just for an investigation. It's just a simple process. You know, the first time I was cheated out of the investigation, I contacted Internal Affairs maybe 100 times with my witnesses, and we've been ran out of the police department. So I'm just begging you, please, just to give us this investigation so we can go on with our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Hamid Khan, Nadia Khan, James Lafferty, and Yaman Salahi.
Hi, good morning, Hamid Khan. I was just listening to this whole conversation sitting and just wondering that the kind of wordsmithing that was going on really is, again, the term comes to mind, is really disgraceful. I mean, amongst 5 leaders of the police department, including the chief, a former U.S. attorney, and members of this commission who are lawyers, including a law professor and I'm assuming an associate dean. I mean, purging, no purging. Record keeping, not record keeping. 1 database, 2 databases. The report says 3 databases. What are we to believe? What are we going to take home with? That this is the way we should expect this police department to function. This is the way that what Jim Lafferty talked about, the history of the Red Squads, the COINTELPRO program, and the partnership between local law enforcement, opening up 2 million documents, 55,000 files, and you want us to believe that, you know, that they're going to purge all this thing? This is really shameful. And this is absolutely where the wasted resources are going. This is how, you know, we're going to be... Chief Beck may not have a bad intention, but this is getting institutionalized. He may want to just see that, okay, I'm a nice guy, but, you know, I mean, I don't wish him ill health, but, you know, he may retire at some point. This is getting codified in an institution that has a history of violence, that has a history of murdering people, that has a history of planting false evidence, that has a history of bombing people, that has a history of opening secret files. So now you expect us to stand here and go home saying all hunky-dory because you accept this Inspector General audit on its word. This is really disgraceful. So we really ask you, Madam President, and the Commission, that we would like to come and make a presentation of this people's audit. You need to take a look at it seriously. This is substantiated. This is substantiated by political research. This is substantiated by the National Academy of Sciences. This is substantiated by a U.S. Senate report. This is substantiated by people's own commentary as well. We can't just, you know, continue with this drama anymore. And if anything, we should move towards rescinding this policy, because this is going to end up in a major disaster and have direct consequences, and you're going to carry the burden on your conscience. Thank you.
Nadia Khan.
I'd like to echo the last thing about how holistic the People's Audit is. I mean, like he said, it's taken many angles, whereas the Inspector General has not taken many angles. And it really frightens me that if there's so much inconsistency on words like purging or not purging, record keeping, not record keeping, imagine the inconsistencies on the even bigger issues than that within the report and within the things we are bringing up. It really, really scares me if in your private conversation you couldn't even coordinate something like that. You know what I mean? And then say, okay, well, this is what we're going to say to the public. So I really also urge you to take a closer look and really push and challenge the Inspector General to do a better audit, because you owe it to us. We are your community members. Don't let one comment, who's supposedly speaking for hundreds of people, which I don't know if she really is, but I know that this group behind me and a lot of people are on the street every single day of Los Angeles talking to these hundreds of people that one lady, Monica, claims to represent. These are the people doing the work, so I really urge you to take us seriously. We are not one group. There might be a few of us here today, but we have spoken with the hundreds of people, and that is who we represent besides ourselves and all the other people that couldn't be here today. You really owe it to us. This is more than a constitutional issue. This is human rights, this is people's lives, and this is much bigger than the audit. And I think the audit needs to be much more clear. And I really, really look forward to see what you come out with next. And I really hope the Madam President and the rest of the Commission demand a much more thorough audit. Maybe look at the People's Audit, take some examples from there, and maybe you can include that in your next one. Thank you.
Thank you. James Lafferty.
Yeah, thank you again. I'll be brief, I hope. A point I didn't get a chance to mention before, Chief and members of the Commission. Many months ago, the National Lawyers Guild, on behalf of the Coalition to Stop LAPD Spying, filed a Public Record Act request on your department, Chief. many months ago. The statutory time for which a reply should have been given to us has long passed. We've given extensions. The extensions have not been met. At the moment, frankly, you're in violation of state law. I have taken you at your word when you have said that you want a transparent police department. Therefore, I cannot understand, taking you at your word, why a not terribly onerous Public Record Act request that was filed months ago with your department has not yet been attended to, so that the information which we are entitled to under state law pursuant to that request has been given to us. It would shed a light on many of the issues that we're all wrestling with here today. So I urge the Commission, and I urge you, Chief, to see to it that because I understand this is not your daily job, but to see to it that whoever is responsible for it in your department finally complies with state law. Otherwise, we'll be in court. Otherwise, it's not a threat. That's the only remedy left to a lawyer and to a group when the law is violated. Please honor the state law. Provide the information that we've requested. Be true to your pledge of transparency, and that's all I'm asking of the Commission on this point and the Chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yaman.
Hi, Yaman Salahi from the ACLU. I just wanted to mention that I was left quite confused by the discussion about what the actual record-keeping procedures are for the unfounded SARs, so some clarification would be appreciated. But I also wanted to note my concern that most of the questions from the Commission focused exclusively on the unfounded SARs and not the founded SARs, which are much more numerous, and which I mentioned in my last comment. The public still has no idea what kinds of activities are being documented in those SARs or noted by the police. So some transparency in that regard would be much appreciated to give the public an opportunity to understand, because like the anecdotes we heard earlier of people being photographed for completely innocent photography leading to police encounters, that's exactly the kind of thing that we're worried about this Special Order 1 program leading to. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other comment cards, ma'am.
All right, then we will now recess for closed session.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item numbers 10A1 and 2 in accordance with Government Code 54957. Session item 10A1 was discussed, and the Chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted with the vote of 3 ayes and no noes. Item 10A2 was discussed, and the Chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted with the vote of 3 ayes and 0 noes. Madam President, is there a motion for adjournment? All those in favor? Aye. All 3.
City of Los Angeles.
There is an Amber Alert.
When duty calls, the LAPD responds.
We have a positive on the Amber Alert vehicle. Dije que no tengo dinero.
To protect and to serve.
¿Estás lastimada?
No.
¿Cuántas personas hay aquí?
Mi hermano está en el baño y mi esposo está ahí.
Pon las manos arriba, por favor. Párese.
Okay, tell me what happened.